Welcome as we continue the practical guide of Islamic laws of inheritance. Now in this video I'm going to give you some tips about how to go about calculations, and during that you will see that we'll cover some frequently asked questions about inheritance as well. First one is, what question should you ask that will be enough for you to solve the case? Someone comes and asks you to solve the matter of inheritance. Who are the list of relatives that you need to know before you start solving the case? Because of course the list could be very extensive, and sometimes people forget to mention certain relatives. So you should proactively ask about them. So it's a good practice to start with the following questions. Ask the name of the deceased. Ask when they died, and then make sure you ask them that, okay, who were the relatives alive at that time of death? Because people might not know that they have to give you that list, and they might be giving the list of right now, and a few relatives might have died. So make sure you ask them date of death and the relatives alive and present at that time. Some marriages might have happened later on, so also figure out what were the relationships at that time. Also, you want to ask them that do they want to get an estimate about the percentage of shares, or they want to actually distribute the property and know the amount or the value of the property. In that case, ask the value of the distributable property. For the list of people, ask them about, tell us if the spouse was married or not at the time of death. If they were married but divorced, this means they were not married at that time. Okay, the time of death, were they married? Husband, wife, if there were more than one wives. Then ask about their children, and I'm talking about their biological children, not the stepchildren or anyone else, their biological children. Then ask about the real parents, ask about their siblings, and then ask the categories of siblings. Is this real siblings, paternal or maternal, haqiqi, alati, or khiyafi? And then to do a more thorough job, you can also ask about their grandparents. Like were the grandparents of the deceased alive or not? So with that, you'll have enough information to solve almost all cases. Very rarely you will deal with a matter where you need to go into the distant asba and figure out, okay, well, there's no one in the second table alive until I reach the column of distant asba. Then you may need to ask about some other male relatives, about their cousins, and uncles. So that information is usually not needed in most scenarios. As you're doing your calculations, what I typically do is I write down the list of these people that I have just talked about, even if I know that they're not going to get share. That way they can see transparently that they were considered, and then they are not getting a share. So you want to be transparent enough that the family does not run into any conflicts. So that's what I typically do. Now most people don't look at the calculation, they just get the final numbers. But on my side, this is what I do. Many times people forget to mention the parents of the deceased. Many times people forget to mention the grandparents, or they mention the siblings, but they don't specify, is it real sibling or is it half brother or half siblings. So please make sure, as a person who's doing the calculation, you do your due diligence. Then typically people wonder how to distribute this wealth now, because wealth is typically in multiple forms. A person may have a house or some other property. They might have a car or more than one cars. Then there are some personal items of use. They might have some watches or clothes or computers, laptops, and then they might have bank balance and other forms of currency that are present right now, and maybe there are new forms of currency that will come up later on. They may have business, and then they have stocks and all that stuff. So what you want to do is, at the time of distribution, you want to assess the value of these commodities. For the value judgment, be fair, be just. Some things are very simple. Bank balance is very simple. But value of a property, value of a car, value of a used laptop, how do you assess these values? You have to be fair in them and try to reach a consensus. Sometimes some overwhelming or louder family members can assign a certain value that may not be fair. So you can always consider consulting a third party, an outsider, an unbiased person, and get a value assessment. Sometimes the value is overrated of a property or the house, that someone can really inflate the value and say, oh, this is this much and that much. Don't do that. So try to get a fair judgment of the values. Then when you get the values, then you can see, okay, what is the total distributable property? Now from that distributable property and the value of that property, don't sell anything, just see what's the value of everything. Then you get shares of everyone. Everyone's shares are known to you, and you say that, okay, person A, B, C, D are going to get this much value, this much value, this much value. Now you can now they can mutually decide if they want to pick. One wants to take the house, for example, another one wants to take the car, another wants to take something else, and then there are fine adjustments needed to make the values match. For example, if someone wants to take the house and everyone agrees that, okay, you can take the house, but your share is not enough to pay for the full house. So what they could do is they can say, okay, I'm going to give an extra amount, pay this extra amount to rest of the relatives so that I can buy the house out. Similarly, you can handle the other items of the property as well. It's always good to reach a consensus with everyone. Don't try to undercut, don't try to get the better property for yourself while others are ignorant of the true value of those properties. So you are answerable to Allah in the end. And Allah does not like any zulm. But what if people are not reaching any consensus? Then what we could do is liquidate the property, liquidate the physical immovable property, and then distribute it so everyone can get their due share. It's better to resolve these matters as soon as possible rather than hide and linger them, and it becomes even more complicated for the next generations. Now let's talk about shared property. If someone shares a property and one of those partners have died, then the part that they shared will be the one that will be distributed, not the whole value. So if someone shares 30% of a business, for example, or 30% of a certain property, then only 30% of that value is at stake of inheritance or at stake of distribution. Last, I want to talk about how to undo if someone has done wrong in matters of inheritance. And unfortunately, this is a very common scenario in our societies. Sometimes it is out of ignorance and sometimes it is deliberate. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive everyone who's made a mistake. This forgiveness has three components. One is feeling of remorse, feeling bad that something wrong has happened. Second is to sincerely ask for tawbah. Remember, this is among the hudud of Allah. Tilka hudud Allah. So don't take it lightly. Ask Allah for forgiveness. And third, don't just stop there. Pay back the people who were deprived. Now, it may be that you are one of the many people who have consumed the lion's share of the property and have deprived others, and you cannot manage everyone else's decision, but at least you can manage your own decision. Figure out what's undue in your account that needs to go back to the inheritors and the heirs of the other people. So maybe the original heirs have died, but their children or their inheritors are still there. So do the due diligence, start from the very beginning when the share was unfairly distributed, go back to that time and start calculating who gets how much. And today, if you're doing this tawbah for your parents or for your grandparents, then redistribute the property as it's supposed to be. I also want to emphasize that this is a matter that Allah has put importance and emphasis to. We should not take it lightly. Any decision or any distribution that happened that goes against the Islamic laws of inheritance is a zulm. As Allah says in Surah Maida, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Whoever makes a judgment or a decision that goes against what Allah has revealed is zalim. As you can see in the description of the videos, there are assignments that you could do along the way to make sure that the skills you're learning about solving these questions and the knowledge is being consolidated. Also solve your scenarios and other practice questions so that you are more competent, and the more you practice, the better you get at it. And in the end, you can also choose to give a certificate exam. You have to score 100% in the exam to be successful, because of course, What if you score 95% and the 5% error is a matter of millions of dollars for someone's life? So we cannot afford any mistake in the exam. So if you're interested in taking an exam and being certified in this information so you can solve people's questions and you can also teach this content to others, please take a look at the description. With this, I want to first congratulate you for listening to all these sessions on Practical Guide of Islamic Laws of Inheritance. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you learned new things, and I hope you have learned out new skills that you can take forward and solve people's questions, and more importantly, tell people how important these matters are. Share these videos with others, share this information with others, and help them also make the right judgments and right decisions that will make their life comfortable in this dunya, give them success in the hereafter, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be happy with them. May Allah accept our efforts and our time. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.